Hey everybody, you're tuned in with Monroe my first show. So I would like to thank everybody for tuning in and watching my first show as we get this thing popping. My channel is strictly for building purposes only. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm not here to tell you how to feel. I'm only here to bring to the light what it is that I find in my personal studies, and you can create your own synopsis from that. Now, I do want to. I learned this. I do want to just before we get into this, I do want to share one life lesson that I've learned. When you're going into learning something, don't already assume that you know what it is the other person is talking about. It's best to assume that you know nothing and are willing to accept or at least listen to what the next person has to say. That way you don't completely dismiss whatever it is that is supposed to be coming to you at that time. Because 9 times out of 10, if you already feel like you know, not necessarily know it all, but if you already feel um, that you are firm in your confidence when it comes to the knowledge pertaining to the certain conversation that you're having, then you block out a lot of things because you're like, oh, I already know this, and it goes in one ear and out the other. When it's actually better to just assume that, or just pretend for a second that you don't know what it is that you're talking about and go into it. And then that way you're really open to the information. And then what you do with that, whenever you get the information, whatever you do at that point in time is completely up to you. Anyways, let's get to it. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Monroe Doctrine. Now, the Monroe Doctrine, excuse me. Okay. Now, the Monroe Doctrine, it was written by the fifth president, James Monroe, or it came from, rather, the fifth president, James Monroe. And if we all know that, well, if you are, more than likely it's a Moor that's watching this, so we know that the last official president was Abe Lincoln. All right. And if you don't know that, that's what it is. He was the last constitutional president, okay? And he was the so-called 16th president as well. So, if he was the 16th and James Monroe was the 5th, that lets you know that James Monroe was a constitutional president, okay? So, we're going to go ahead and get into this thing. I'm trying to make it real quick. All right, so at the proposal of the Russian imperial government made through the minister of the emperor residing here. Think about that. Made through the minister of the emperor residing here. Who was the emperor they're referring to? Let's read on. A full power and instructions have been transmitted to the minister of the United States at St. Petersburg to arrange by amicable negotiation the respective rights and interests of the two nations on the northwest coast of this continent. Now, they're on the continent of America, and it speaks of two nations being on the northwest coast. Okay? You have to understand that prior to the United States didn't just come over here and was the United States overnight. All right? There was already a political system in place prior to the United States even becoming birthed, okay? Before they became what they are, before they became recognized, I shall say. And that leads me to my next point. How do you become recognized as a nation and not just a group of people? You got to go talk to a superior power. I'm going to leave it right there because we'll get back into it later. All right, let's go. A similar proposal has been made by His Imperial Majesty to the government of Great Britain, which has likewise been acceded to. The government of the United States has been desirous by friendly proceedings of manifesting the great value which they have invariably attached to the friendship of the emperor. I'm going to read that again because I did get a little tongue-tied, and I want you to understand they keep on talking about this emperor. Who is this emperor that they're speaking of? And I'm going to go ahead and give you a hint. If you're watching this on YouTube, open up a new page and Google the George Washington letter, or something to this extent, George Washington writes to the Sultan of Morocco. George Washington writes to the Emperor of Morocco. Search along those lines, and you will find a document that is written by George Washington to the leader of Morocco, thanking him for allowing the so-called United States to set up in his dominion. You don't write to the leader of someone if you're not subject to that person. Or you don't write to them thanking them for allowing them to allow you to do business on their land. You know what I'm saying? If you're not subject to that person. All right. All right. So let's get into it. Where should we jump back in? Okay. Let's jump in right here. In the discussions to which the interest has given rise, and in the arrangements by which they may terminate, the occasion has been judged proper for asserting, as a principle in which the rights and interests of the United States are involved, that the American continents, plural, the American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered as subject for future colonization by any European powers. Now, let's jump away from the text really quick. I'm going to specifically speak to those who still like to think that they are Negro, black, colored, all those colorable labels. Okay, I'm going to speak to those guys. I want you to look up the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Once you have this PDF, I want you to look into the definitions. Then I want you to search for indigenous. You will find that indigenous doesn't mean what a lot of people are saying that it means. You have to be aware that there is a lot of miseducation going on purposely. They don't want you to claim your estate. Once you claim your estate, it's over. Game's up. The game is already up. We've already started claiming our estates. Okay? So, I want you to go into the definition of indigenous. And what you will find is indigenous peoples are those who were here prior to colonization, and the people who were forced to come to the New World, so-called New World, by colonization. So, if you really and truthfully believe that you are an African American, and you really and truthfully believe that your ancestors were slaves in the sense that they teach it in school, then regardless, you're still indigenous, okay? Flat out. If they were forced to come here from Africa, you're still indigenous, buddy. Flat out, okay? My personal belief, and the majority of our beliefs as we as a people, as a unit, we believe that we did not come over here on those ships. We've been here. We are the original beings of this hemisphere, of this planet, actually. But I digress. So, this clearly states that the peoples who were here prior to colonization were free, independent, and they had maintained their society. That's exactly what this says. Let me read it again for you. The American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers. Now, if you feel that I have interpreted this passage wrongfully, leave a comment. Where's it? Leave a comment. But I know you won't. All right. Where else should we indulge ourselves? Ah, I got it. The political system of the allied powers is essentially different in the respects of that of America. Now, another thing I want to another tool rather I want to give you that will allow you to see through the connotative language, I will call it. When they're speaking of America, they are not talking about the United States. You have what is it called? United States of America. So for something to be of something, then usually that indicates ownership or the origin. Okay? My daughter, the pretty young thing back there, the beautiful empress back there, the queen of bee back there, she is of me. Okay? So she is of me. I mean, it's very clear. There's no other way to explain it. She is of me. So if the United States are of America, that should let you know there's two totally different entities. All right. So we'll jump back to what I said earlier. There was already, prior to the United States being here, there was already political systems set up. Okay? The political system of the Allied powers is essentially different in the respect from that of America. This difference proceeds from which exist in their respective governments. There was multiple governments set up that were functioning here when the so-called pilgrims or the so-called Vandals arrived on our shores. Okay, look up the Iroquois Confederation. All right, different tribes had their own thing going on, yo. And this is why even now we got, all right. So look, we got Bloods, we got Crips, we got GDs, we got Vice Lords, we got Green Tops, we got Pyrus. The list go on. Blackstones, P-Stones, Blackstones. The list goes on. All right. Now imagine if all of these nations, at least I know for a fact that GD is a nation. Okay, or they that's a nation. All right. So let's say that they all assume nationhood, right? So it's the Blood Nation, the Crip Nation, Vice Lord Nation, yada yada yada. All right. Now let's imagine that all these entities created nation states. Okay. Now, by being on one continent, and let's take all the nonsense away, all the drug dealing, all the killing, all the shooting, all the gang banging, set tripping. Let's take all that stuff away. All right. Now, what you have is a group of people who are have a community rather of people who gather around certain belief systems. Okay, now each one would be its own separate nation. Each one has its own rules that govern the set, so to speak, the nation, so to speak. Okay, this is what was going on prior to the United States coming to our shores. Okay, so let's get back into it. The political system of the Allied powers is essentially different in the respects from that of America. This difference from which exists in their respective governments and to the defense of our own, which has been achieved by the loss of so much blood and treasure and matured by the wisdom of their most enlightened citizens. The people who aided the United States in becoming the United States were our people. We aided them in the creation of this entity that has gone rogue. And see, that's the one thing about Moors. Our hearts are big, yo. Our hearts are so big. And what I honestly and truly believe is that we are our ancestors. And because we were treated as such and subjugated like we were and just completely screwed over, we now try to belittle our heart. But we are loving beings by nature. By nature. So my suggestion for real, is to open up your heart to your brother and to your sister. Straight up. Whenever you see another brother, even if they don't know that they are a Moor, they are a Moor. You can never change your blood, dog. You can never change your blood. And that's just like these Europeans over here who think they Americans. They tripping, yo. They tripping. How can you be an American when you're not from the soil? Flat out. All right. So my suggestion is, next time you see a Moor, open the door for her. Shake his hand. Go out of your way to smile, wave, and show love. And start building this nation. All right. Let's go. Where were we at? And matured by the wisdom of their most enlightened citizens, and under which we have enjoyed unexampled felicity. You hear that? Unexampled felicity. What James Monroe is saying, felicity is like a supreme form of happiness. Okay? It's joyfulness, right? This joyfulness and this love and this brotherly love, shout out Philly, this brotherly love was unexampled at his time. He had nothing to compare this with. We as a people, we have the supreme love that I know is the love that I have for God, which you call God, which some call Allah, myself, my consort, my daughter, my mama, my papa, my granny, my grandmama. You know, that's the most highest form of love that I know. This man said it was unexampled. That's saying something. That's saying something. You ain't never been in love like this before in your life, bro? What? Man, you know how it is, man. I don't know if anybody that's from the South can vouch for this. If you from the North or you grew up in the North and you come to the South, it's a whole different type of love. It's a whole different type of love. It's that love when you come into the house and you smell them grains cooking and them yams cooking and oh my goodness, the cornbread got this is real corn. This ain't no Jiffy. This ain't no Jiffy. And they say, "Oh, you ate, baby," and you're like, "Oh, well, I ain't hungry." They be like, "Boy, get you a plate. You want something to drink? Oh, I ain't thirsty. Get you a cup." That's the love I'm talking about. That's the love this man was experiencing. That's what we are capable of. But we have to stop warring against each other. We have to. The more that we war against, Iron sharpeneth iron. Very true. But if you add fire to fire, bro, that fire gonna go up. I know I'm an Aries. I'm a fire sign by nature. All right, by nature. So I know once that fire get going, bro, it's hard to put it out. It's hard to put it out. So we have to make a conscious effort not to be so difficult, not to be so bitter about nothing. About nothing. We'll see a more in the store and just mug them. I see facts. Facts. All right. So I go work out today, and I had to stop. I had to stop so I could use the restroom. Whatever. Right. I run inside the McDonald's, and it's a motorbike behind the register. All right. I'm only 28. Okay. Little mama had to be about 35, 36, maybe early 40s, but you know, black don't crack, you know what I'm saying? So she might have been early 40s, right? So I come in looking like I am. You could tell I just got done working out. I'm tired, bro. I'm beat. So I walk in, and they got this fan that blows as you walk in the door, which is weird. And it's super loud. So I open the door, and it kind of startled me. I was like, oh, shh. You know what I'm saying? I didn't say it. I said sheesh, actually. I was like, oh, sheesh. You know what I'm saying? Because it kind of startled me. And this lady, she looked at me. So I look at her. I'm a firm believer. I look at you dead in your face. You know what I'm saying? I look at you dead in the eyes. I want to see your soul. You know, I want to see who it is I'm talking to, right? So I look at this lady's soul, bro. Look at her in the eye or in her lenses, you know. And she looked at me, bro, and she was just so bitter and so angry. Like she was just mugging. Like, so I'm like, hey, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? Trying to break the ice. Just trying to smile, you know what I'm saying? To break the ice, like, hey, how you doing? Da 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 da. And she was not trying to feel that vibe, yo. She was so closed off. She has been hurt so bad that she's afraid to let anybody in. That's what I see. And we gotta stop being like that, yo. Especially to one another. Especially to those who claim to have our back, yo. Anyways, I digress. Alright, where we at? This whole nation is devoted. He goes on to say this whole nation is devoted. Because of the love that we were showing him and his people, their nation is now devoted to us. Alright. We owe it, therefore, to candor and to the amicable relations existing between the United States and those powers to declare that we should consider any attempt on the part to extend their system to any portion of this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety. Now, you also have to put in mind what was going on at this time in which he's speaking of. Portugal and Spain is in the Eastern Hemisphere going nuts. They want the United States to join in is what's really happening. United States is like, bruh, we devoted to these people over here. If you were to bring any of that into this side of the hemisphere, what does it say? The United States and those powers to declare that we should consider any. Okay, this is exactly what he says. So, like I told you, Spain and Portugal are there going nuts. All right. So he says we should consider any attempt on their part to extend their system to any portion of this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety. They already knew what it was, bro. They already knew what it was. Even even with all of the nonsense that they were doing and trying to make so-called legal in the states, the colonies at that time, right? He knew He knew if we bring any of that BS that y'all got going on over there, over here, it is going to be dangerous for us. It's going to be dangerous for us. All right. Now, I really want you to pay attention to this part. Okay. It says, with the existing colonies or dependencies of any European power, we have not interfered and shall not interfere. But with the governments who have declared their independence and maintained it, and whose independence we have, on great consideration, on just principles, acknowledged, we could not view any interposition for the purpose of oppressing them or controlling in any other manner their destiny by any European power in any other light than as manifestation of a unfriendly disposition towards the United States. Monroe, why you telling me to pay attention to that part, bro? I don't get it. Let me break it down. I'm glad you asked. All right, so check it. Look, it says, on great consideration and on just principles. Let me stop there. Do you think that the United States is acting upon just principles in great consideration? I don't think so. That's why you have to hold them accountable. First off, shout out to Sister Sharon. All right. Shout out to Sister Light. Shout out to Taj. Shout out to Jamal. Shout out to Gio. Shout out to everybody that's really out here being active. Shout out to Sabir. You hear me? Shout out to everybody who's out here really trying to make a difference. Even if I don't know you, if you're reading a book about your people and you trying to figure out a way that you can help everybody and not being selfish and so stuck inside this system, shout out to you. Big up to you. Because it takes a big person to do that. Okay? It takes a big person to do that. Because you're not only thinking about you and what you got going on now. You're thinking about your children and your children's children. Because regardless if you believe in end time prophecies or you believe in you were a super preparer or prepper or whatever, regardless of the fact, things are going to get ugly in the United States. All right. So I ask you once again, do you think the United States is acting upon just principles? Now, I'm gonna continue because he speaks something into existence. He tells you right here. He says, acknowledged, we could not view any interposition for the purpose of oppressing them. Have we been oppressed? Or controlling in any other manner their destiny? Has our destiny been controlled? By any European power? Or is the United States a European power? In any other light than as the manifestation of an unfriendly disposition towards the United States. Now, is there an unfriendly manifestation of an unfriendly disposition towards the United States? I think that there is. So, that's all I got to say. It's Monroe the Moore. That's the Monroe Doctrine. I'm out of here. Peace and love.